How my entitled late aunt lost everything. Some backstory that's relevant to the story: in December of 2020, my father agreed to put his mother into a nursing home to protect his sister, my aunt, from an elder abuse investigation and getting my grandmother moved into state care. Because of my aunt's negligence, my grandmother had been hospitalized 3 times in 2 months, once for a severe UTI, another time for an infected wound because my aunt secured my grandmother's diaper with duct tape, and the final time because of second-degree burns after my aunt left a heating pad on my grandmother's back overnight. Ironically, in October 2021, my aunt would end up in a nursing home after she burned herself with a heating pad, then didn't get medical treatment until the burn was badly infected. In January 2022, my grandmother passed away at the age of 94 years old. In my grandparents' will, they split their estate between their 2 children 50-50. However, because neither my father nor aunt was on the deed to my grandparents' house, it was signed over to a probate lawyer who would be tasked with selling the house. When my father started going through his mother's affairs in February 2022, he discovered that the state was on the verge of taking the house because the only bills my aunt bothered paying were the electric and cable bills, and she hadn't paid property taxes since December 2020. My father also discovered that there were 2 massive liens on the house totaling almost $200,000, one from the nursing home my grandmother had been in because my aunt hadn't paid them either, the other because my aunt convinced my grandmother to take home equity loan out on the house so she could buy a car. Initially, she was only supposed to take what she needed for the car, or roughly $6,000. However, my aunt went behind my grandmother's back and would end up taking the full $100,000 the bank offered them. My aunt had been able to co-sign for the loan, so she was authorized to take the full amount. She also never made any of the monthly payments on the loan because she legitimately thought loans were money banks just give people for free, no strings attached. My aunt never told anyone what she did with the remaining $94,000, but the rest of the family is suspecting that she gambled it away at local casinos. My aunt was also given full access to my grandmother's bank account, which she had almost completely drained before my grandmother passed, meaning my father had to pay any outstanding bills out of his own pocket, though he was eventually reimbursed by the lawyer. Some point between late January 2022 and March 2022, in an attempt to buy herself some time to recover enough to leave the nursing home and thinking that the house couldn't be sold if someone was living in it, my aunt convinced one of her friends to move into my grandmother's vacant house unbeknownst to my father and the lawyer. As you can imagine, things got messy when my father found out. Initially, my aunt told my father that the man was there to take care of her 2 cats. However, even after my aunt was court-ordered to sign her 2 cats over to my father due to neglect and abuse, the man refused to leave. Both cats have been treated and rehomed and are doing well. We eventually found out he had broken his lease, moved out of his apartment, and had nowhere else to go except his and my aunt's daughter's house, and who adamantly refused to let her father move in with her. Around April, my parents started to deep clean the disgustingly dirty house with the man still living there, and he did everything in his power to obstruct my parents' efforts. He'd call up claiming he was sick with COVID, which my parents almost always called his bluff on since he was physically disabled and never left the house nor had anyone but my parents visit. One day he told my mother, "Well, Sharon, EA, said we'd be able to live here forever," and that my father didn't have the balls to kick me out. Well, my mom told my father what had been said, and the very next day my father gave the man an ultimatum. My father told the man, "Either you leave on your own by May 1st, or I'll have you evicted." The man chose the eviction route because my aunt told him they can't legally evict a disabled person, and he believed her. He ended up having to move in with his daughter, who is no longer speaking to my aunt because my aunt has ruined that woman's livelihood on multiple occasions. But that's a whole other story. However, before he left the house, per my aunt's orders, he stole several valuable pieces of jewelry, including a box of rings that had been willed to her cousins. We were able to get the stolen jewelry back in late 2023 after the probate lawyer had to send police to retrieve it, which is another doozy of a story. Because of the whole squatter incident, we missed a massive housing boom where houses were selling for significantly more than what they were worth, and the house was put on the market during a slump, and the house sold for almost $150,000 less than what it was worth. And it led to another lengthy legal battle with my aunt because she refused to sell or throw out any of her furniture, in another attempt to buy enough time to leave the nursing home, until she was court-ordered to do so. Given what the house sold for and deducting the lien from the home equity loan, The lien the nursing home put on the house had been dismissed by a judge. In the end, my father ended up with just under $60,000, while my aunt ended up with just under $50,000. My aunt got less because the probate lawyer charged her more than he charged my father because she was the one who had drawn things out for so long. Around that time, my aunt had been deemed unfit to make decisions for herself by a judge and several of her doctors, and ended up signing her half of the inheritance to my father to avoid losing it to the nursing home she was in. My aunt passed away on August 1st at the age of 68 from multi-organ failure caused by years of heavy smoking, ignoring her diabetes, and refusing to consent to a surgery that would have likely saved her life. We didn't have a funeral for her. We simply had her cremated, and her ashes along with pictures and other personal belongings were given to her older daughter. My aunt's younger daughter tried to sue my father for the rest of her mother's inheritance, but the suit was quickly dropped since the money my aunt had inherited after her mother's death had already been signed over to my father, so my aunt's daughter had no right to it. Our one saving grace in this whole fiasco was that my aunt was in a nursing home for the entire process. Otherwise, it would have been significantly messier. There's a lot I didn't go into for the sake of not typing out an almost literal novel, but I'll gladly elaborate on anything I can.